It's my pleasure tonight to help Jann Arrington-Wolcott launch her, I was going to say her new book, and it is a new book in a way, launch the revised and improved edition of Brujo. Before I do that, though, I need to put in a plug for one of my favorite places in the world, Collected Works. I don't know where we authors would be without independent bookstores. And I say this sincerely. People can buy whatever they want online, but authors really need to be able to look fans in the eye. And independent bookstores give us that opportunity. And what could be better for holiday shopping than a book? It doesn't spoil, it doesn't break. It lasts forever. You can write your own name in the front. So, hold on, what?
What's your name?
I'm sorry. I'm Ann Hillerman. I'm a.
Yay!
This is why writers have husbands. One of the reasons. So now I get to talk about one of my favorite writers, Jann Arrington-Wolcott. Jann started out not as a writer, but as an actress. And I think what she learned in terms of characters and pacing and timing and how to bring a story from one place to the other in a set amount of time has really served her well as an author. Jann first wrote this book, which we're celebrating tonight, Brujo, 20 years ago. And it was her first attempt at fiction, which I think was remarkable. I remember reading it 20 years ago and thinking, whoa, I know this lady, feeling just so proud of myself for having Jann in my circle of writers. And as I was thinking about Brujo, I was thinking about what I was doing 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, I was driving my son to soccer practice, driving my son to basketball practice. I was working as a journalist, and I was doing a few little work-for-hire contracts for travel books while Jann was writing Brujo. So I think she really got a head start on me. I wanted to ask you to talk a little bit about the origins of Brujo, the first Brujo.
Okay. I'm a third-generation New Mexican, so I was raised with the legends and the traditions of New Mexico and the Southwest. And I grew up with that, as I said. In fact, one of my best friend's aunts was a curandera when we were quite young. And curandera is curanderismo is Hispanic for to cure, to heal. And so a curandera or curandero are healers. And this is an ancient tradition. Now, I'll just throw this in right now because I did know this. And so that was part of what interested me. It led me to write this book. The flip side of curanderismo is brujeria, which is black magic. It's using, the idea is that if someone has the power to cure you, then they may have the power to harm you as well. And so a brujo or a bruja, depending on the sex, is a sorcerer, a witch. It's someone who uses the power for their own best ends rather than for someone else, as a curandera or curandero would be. So I had a magazine assignment. This was 25 years ago. Of course, I was only 10, but to write a feature story for the Santa Fe magazine about curanderismo, and I interviewed this lovely person, and we really talked about it, this a really wonderful healer, and we talked about it at length, and we talked about brujeria as well, and he warned me. He said, don't ever go near a brujo or bruja. They are seriously dangerous. So, okay. that sort of played in my mind after the story was end, and I got to playing that old what if game that we writers play. What if? I thought, well, what if a Santa Fe journalist, married, mother of a teenage daughter, came into contact with a brujo on an assignment. And what if her husband traveled a lot and she felt neglected and lonely? That had to be a part of that too, because he was gone a lot. And what if this brujo was very charismatic, very sexy, and what if she got into really big trouble with him, with husband out of town? And so the characters just started developing in my mind. It was like a seed, and then they started blossoming. And for, I don't know, a year and a half after that, I continued to write for magazines, but I started researching about this, about brujeria, and I talked to curanderos, and I did encounter some brujos and brujas, but I didn't linger. They were scary, and they weren't going to talk to me anyway if they could help it, because I could tell them, I grew up around here, I came close to marrying a Mexican man, my great-grandmother was full-blooded Native American. They didn't care. They weren't buying it anyway. I was blonde, and so they didn't want to tell me anything. Gradually, I did win. I won the trust of some of them, and so I researched and researched, and I started writing. And I wrote, and I wrote, and I rewrote. A whole forest suffered. I'm so sorry now. But finally, I had my book. And then something really incredible happened. It was filmed as a movie, Seduced by Evil. It was produced by our own Marty Markinson, who is sitting right here. And it was for TV. It was a TV movie. Well, you can imagine, I was just stunned. I was so excited I could hardly stand it. And then it did fairly well. It did quite well. And the movie starred Suzanne Summers.
So Jann gave me 8 questions to ask her. So I'm hoping you all are planning to be here at least until 10.
Oh, actually, I don't remember what they are now, and I certainly don't remember the answers, so we'll get out a lot quicker.
Well, one thing that I'm really curious about this whole process of going back to a book that you wrote basically when you were just beginning to be a writer. And now you've published, 3 books since then. What is it like to go back to a book like that? I think if it were me, I would be tempted to just rewrite it from beginning to end. But I know, having read a draft of Brujo, that wasn't what you did. That you just kind of updated the technology. So I guess my question is, how did you resist the inclination to rewrite the whole darn thing and get it in on deadline?
Well, I never thought about doing that. And my publisher, Pronghorn Press, approached me and said she had just read the old Brujo and said, would you be interested in revising it and we could bring it out again? And I thought, surely I'm a better writer now than I was 20 years ago. And I thought, that might be fun. So I checked in with my characters, who were still living in my head, of course, and I asked them, well, they started dancing around and said, yes, yes, yes. And so I decided to do it. Now, I didn't really change the story. I added to it. It's much stronger now. My characters are more mature and stronger, so that made the book scarier now and sexier. And I just had a great time with it. I didn't really update the technology because I felt that would really change the book. So she still doesn't have a cell phone, and that way she can really get in trouble and get lost. And so I'm really thrilled with this rewrite. I just had so much fun with it, and so I hope you will enjoy it. And I'm going to write a sequel. So that's in the works too, after all this time. Now, let's see. Yeah. Thank you. Did I answer the right question? I
Yes,
did.
yes. I know earlier you talked about research, about your background, living in an area where there were curanderas and curanderos. One of the best scenes in Brujo, I think, is that sweat lodge scene. So tell me, how did you research that?
Well, I had done Native American sweat lodges for many years. As I said, my grandmother's mother was Native American, and I can't even remember when I did the first one. I typically did them each season, 4 times a year, and I did them with Arlena. Arlena had a wonderful teepee, and we did great sweat lodges on her property with a fabulous medicine man. And they are the most cathartic, purifying thing I see. Then why Native Americans and actually the Irish and all kinds of other cultures have done sweats for thousands of years. And I did them on my birthday, and anyway, I had done a lot of them. And so naturally, I just naturally put it into the book. Now, I didn't, I was very careful with that because I stayed in my heroine's mind. I didn't get into the native mind. So it was just her experience with them, which was mine as well. All the books that we write come out of us, all the characters, they come out of our belief system, they come out of experiences we've had and people we know. Brujo has magic in it. I mean, it has magic, whereas Deathmark has a lot of Native American spirituality, and also they're both spiritual. To me, they're spiritual, especially Deathmark. It is sexy and it is scary, and I love that. I love that book. I was very happy to finally get it out.
Well, I have to say, I'm happy to see Brujo back because I remembered it fondly from the first incarnation. One thing, looking at the reviews, a lot of reviewers have really given you a pat on the back for your action scenes, for your dialogue, and for writing really characters that people feel like they can relate to and they seem like real people. Do you think that your background as an actress was a help with that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely it was. When I started writing, I used the same techniques. I just sort of crawled into my character that I was developing as I would a character on the stage. And I walk like them. I started walking like them. I try it out, started talking like them, and just really got into it. My husband says it sounds like there is a real party going on in my study when I'm working, or maybe a brawl, because I'm talking to all of them and they're talking back to me, but definitely the acting helped. Yeah.
This brings me to another question. As you know, Jann and I were just at a writers' conference, and at that conference, and frequently when writers get together, there's a lot of discussion about technique. And there are some writers who they maybe do a synopsis of the book, and then they outline every chapter, and then they sit down and very efficiently write the book. And then there are writers who kind of just play it by ear and waste a lot of time, but defend their inefficient way of writing by saying that it makes it more fun for them because they're learning the story as they're writing it. So which school do you come down on, and how would you defend yourself?
And I fall somewhere in the middle because I do have a loose outline. I have an idea and I have a loose outline, but I don't follow it religiously, and I think that's really the fun. The characters develop, and sometimes they go in a different direction than I had planned for it to. And it's always better. So I wonder sometimes when I'm really in the flow, who's writing this? Where's this coming from? So it's magical. I think writing is magical. I think all artists know this. All art is magical.
So when you start a book, do you know how it's going to end?
Yes, I do. I'm stuck to that. I do. I don't know exactly how I'm going to tie up all of the loose ends, but I do know how it's going to end. I just have to get it there.
You mentioned earlier that writing has been kind of a spiritual path for you. You want to elaborate on that a little more?
I would. You know, it is a spiritual path for me. It requires some of the same things as any spiritual path does. It requires diligence. It requires perseverance. It requires faith. Faith in what you're doing has some meaning and value, and you have to be true to it. You have to be true to it, like any spiritual path. The main thing, though, I think, one thing I really think is true is that it humbles writers. I said this once at a writers' conference, and some woman stood up and she said, "You don't look very humble to me. You know, look at all you've accomplished." And I said, "Well, you know, it's been kind of a long road." I just thought of something that Erica Jong said. I saw her when she wrote A Fear of Flying. We remember this, right? Okay, I was at a book signing, and that's a whole nother story with her. But she said something that stuck with me, and I memorized it. Oh dear, I hope I memorized it. I hope it's still there. Let me see. She said, "Fame is a powerful instrument of grace because it humbles its chosen victims in a hurry. You sail into it, your canvas filled with grandiosity. And then when your 15 minutes are over and you are becalmed, you realize that grandiosity can't take you where you need to go. And that's when you start rowing like hell and praying for the strength to stay afloat."
I think the other part of writing, it's really hard work. And so you spend a lot of time just by yourself. Well, not you, you're there with your party friends.
Yeah,
But,
never alone.
but most writers are basically by themselves. And then you're doing events like this. And I think, particularly these days, if you want people to read your books, you have to be out in the public. And I mean, it's kind of an interesting contrast, don't you think? Sort of the
Absolutely.
introversion that writing takes, and then the extroversion of being here with a microphone, talking about yourself when you probably would rather just be home playing with your pups.
Well, you know, I think I'm an introvert, and I'm also an extrovert. You know, from the acting days, and those of you who know me know I certainly have an extroverted side, but I have to be alone a lot too, and so that's it's a balance. I think it's a real balance.
I wanted to ask, would you read a sample from Brujo?
Oh, I would love to. Okay, I chose this passage. It's not too long, Michael. Did Michael already leave? Well, this is really towards the end of the story. And our heroine, Lee, has gotten herself involved emotionally and sexually with the charismatic, powerful, and deadly dangerous Juan Mascarenas. And she is desperate now to free herself from him. Lee got out of bed, careful not to disturb her husband, and walked into the bathroom. After swallowing a sleeping pill and turning off the light, she paused to open the window and look outside. It was a bright night. The moon, only days away from being full, reflected off the light snow that had fallen earlier, casting an eerie luminescence across the midnight landscape. From the hills beyond the house came the lonely yipping cry of a coyote, answered by the barking of a neighbor's dog. She was about to turn from the window when a slight movement caught her eye. Just beyond the house, beside a large pinon tree, Something was definitely moving. Lee leaned in close, straining for a better look. What she saw caused her entire body to tighten in terror. A man stepped away from the tree and stood clearly silhouetted in the moonlight. The set of his powerful shoulders, the arrogant angle of his head, left no doubt as to his identity. For a long moment, he gazed toward the darkened window where she stood locked in fright. Then he moved back behind the tree. Lee held her breath while the blood roared in her ears. For a moment, she thought she might faint. What was Juan doing out there, skulking around in the middle of the night? Maybe she should wake Nick or set off the alarm to scare him away. Before she could decide what to do, Nick opened the bathroom door. "Babe, I heard you get up. Are you all right?" Something inside Lee crumbled. It was time for the truth, at least part of it. "There's a man out there," she whispered, almost choking on the words, "hiding in the trees." "What? Where?" Nick pressed his face against the window. "I don't see anyone." He turned away and grabbed his robe off a hook on the bathroom door. "You stay here. I'm going out to have a look." He slipped loafers on his bare feet and hurried down the stairs. Lee was right behind him. "Go back up," he said over his shoulder. "No." She hesitated for only a moment. "Nick, I know who's out there." He stopped at the bottom of the stairs, staring up at her. "Who?" "Juan." "The medicine man? What makes you think so?" "I recognized him. Nick, he's dangerous. We have to call the police." Nick quickly zipped a down jacket over his robe and turned off the alarm. "No, please." Lee grabbed his arm. "Please don't go out there." "Let go, honey," he ordered, prying her arm loose and grabbing a heavy wrought iron fireplace poker. "I've had more than enough of this character. Stay here and lock the door behind me." He left through... Can I help you? Here. Thank you. He left through the sliding glass door that led to the patio. Lee locked the door and braced herself against it, watching Nick move around the side of the house and disappear behind the pinon tree. Her heart was thundering in her chest as though it might burst. Oh, dear God, what will Juan do to Nick? He's capable of anything. She gripped the door handle as she stared through the glass. Something moved behind one of the piñons. She drew back, holding her breath. Suddenly, a huge raven flew out of the tree and over the top of the house. Lee heard a ringing in her ears just before her knees buckled and she slumped to the floor. A loud banging on the door yanked her back to awareness. "Lee! Lee!" Fighting away the nausea, she pulled herself to her knees and reached up to unlock the door. In an instant, Nick was beside her. "Are you all right? What happened?" I guess I fainted." "Oh, Nick, you're safe. Thank God." "Of course I'm safe. I circled all around the house but didn't see anyone. What made you..." Lee started to cry. "It sounds crazy, but I did see Juan when we were upstairs. Then a big raven flew out of the tree." "Are you saying you fainted because you saw a bird?" "You don't understand. The raven was in the tree, the same tree that Juan was hiding behind. The raven..." "Honey, you know ravens are common around here. We see them all the time." He helped her to her feet and took a moment to reset the alarm. "Come on, let's get back to bed." With his jacket still on and his arm around her waist, he half carried her up the stairs. "Easy now," he said, adjusting the covers. He peered down at her with a worried look. "Your eyes look a little funny, sort of out of focus. Did you hit your head when you fell?" No, I don't think so." "Well, I'm going to get a wet rag for a wet cloth for your forehead anyway," he said, going into the bathroom and turning on the light. He came out holding the bottle of sleeping pills. "How many of these did you take?" "Just one. I had a bad dream and..." Are you sure you only took one? I think maybe you took one and then forgot and took another. That could easily happen. They're pretty strong. I only took one, damn it. Well, it obviously hit you hard. You're still weak from your accident. It's going to take a while for you to recover completely. He zipped the pills into his jacket pocket and tossed it along with his robe across the chair. No more of those pills while I'm gone, he said. You clearly had some kind of reaction to them tonight. I'm just glad you didn't hurt yourself when you passed out. He peered into her eyes again. Okay, you're looking a little better. Here, he said, handing her a glass of water from the nightstand. Drink this. You're probably also dehydrated. Then he yawned. I've got to get some sleep tonight, babe. Big travel day tomorrow. He kissed her cheek and rolled over. Before long, he was snoring. Lee lay awake, staring at the ceiling and trying to process what had happened. No wonder Nick thought I was drugged out of my mind, she thought. I insisted that Juan was lurking outside and then passed out cold at the sight of a raven. There is no way to make him understand. Any rational person knows that a man can't turn into a bird. I can't say anything about this to anyone, not even Dr. Mallory. Not if I want to be considered sane. But I know what I saw. Juan was out there, and he'll be back.
Thank you. Thank you.
What's next for you? What are you working on now?
Well, I'm working on a fictionalized memoir. And boy, I'm having fun with that. It's a whole different thing. And I'm really fictionalizing it a lot. But anyone who knows my birth family will recognize everybody. It's wonderful therapy, and it makes me laugh. It makes me cry. And then I am going to write the sequel. I have an idea for a sequel that I don't think anybody's ever done. And that's all I'm going to tell you about now. I told you Suzanne Summers was in Seduced by Evil. And, very, very proud of that. It's amazing to me how life is so cyclic and how we go around and around and we're all connected. Sitting here in the front row is Ron Bloomberg, who is an incredible comedy writer. He wrote for All in the Family, as well as for Three's Company with Suzanne. So, and now he is writing plays. So here he is, and here we all are connected. Isn't that bizarre? Do you want to stand up and take a bow? He says, hell no. I would like to ask Anne something first. Okay, Anne, we all know how successful you've been as a journalist. You've published many gorgeous nonfiction books. And then with your first fiction, oh, my brain just totally left me, Spider-Woman's Daughter, which went right to the top, the New York bestseller list, a huge success. And then that was followed by Rock with Wings, which also hit the New York Times bestseller list. And she is writing the third in the Bernadette Manuelito mystery series, which will be out very soon. I would like to know about your writing practices, dear. How do you do it? How do you do all of the promoting and the writing? What are your secrets?
Well, I don't think it's a secret. Writing has to be a job. You need to approach it the same way, really, you would any job, particularly the promotion part. But I feel lucky because I really love it. I love doing the writing. I love the creative part. And I don't mind the promotion either. You know what we were saying earlier about introverts, the introverted part of being a writer and then the extroverted part of being the salesperson for your books. I always was, particularly in my 20s, I was really, really shy. But luckily, I didn't start writing fiction until I was in my 60s, and by then I'd gotten over that. So, I really feel blessed and honored to be able to do what I'm doing. I'm sure you do too. I think anybody who has a desire to write and has the good fortune to be able to spend some time on it is really, really blessed. And like you were saying, I think it's true of any creative work, if it's painting or music, to be able to spend a lot of your time doing what you know you're meant to do is really wonderful. And I have to say, Santa Fe is a great place for creative people in all different medias. There is just a real sense of community and a lot of support. I think in some towns you might be looked at slightly askew if you said, well, I just sit in my office for 3 hours and I write one chapter and then I go back the next day and say it's no good and throw it away. But in Santa Fe, people say, oh yeah, sure, that's how it works.
That's right.
Well, Jann is happy to sign her book for anyone who would like one. And the policy at Collected Works is that you sign it and then you can pay for it. So thank you, Jann.
And Anne is too, aren't you, darling?
Sure, if anyone would like one of mine, I would be glad to sign it.
Yes, her books are here too, so.
So thank you all very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you all so much, and for being so kind.